A low rumble shook the walls of the underground bunker, knocking dust from the cracked ceiling. Commander Alex Carter straightened from his holographic display, eyes narrowing at the red lights flashing across the control panel. "That's not a drill," he muttered, his voice laced with tension. His hand hovered over the intercom, and a second later, alarms blared through the complex, echoing in the narrow metal corridors. Lieutenant Mia Torres, his second in command, sprinted into the room, breathless but focused. "Commander, we've got visual on the Clither fleet. It's worse than we thought." Alex turned to face the large tactical screen dominating the far wall. Dozens of red blips, more than any previous invasion, moved toward Earth's surface. "Damn it! They're hitting us with everything they've got." Mia's face tightened, but her eyes flickered with determination. "Our defenses can't hold that many. We need a new plan, now." Alex's mind raced. Every instinct told him to prepare for a full defensive, but they couldn't win that way. Not with numbers this large. His gaze shifted to the alien standing silently by the corner, Zather, the renegade from the Yun species. He had arrived days earlier, offering intel in exchange for asylum. So far, his information had checked out, but Alex still wasn't sure if he could be trusted. Zather's dark, reptilian eyes flicked toward Alex. "You hesitate too long, human. The Clither do not give second chances." Alex clenched his jaw. "You claim to have intercepted their communications. Are you sure about this weak point in their fleet?" Zather's scaled head tilted slightly. "Yes. Their shield generators are vulnerable when overextended. But it won't last. You must strike hard and fast." Mia folded her arms, glaring at the alien. "And what's stopping you from leading us into a trap?" Zather didn't flinch. "My people are finished. I have no future with the Clither. But if you succeed, perhaps there is hope for both of us." Alex weighed his options. The fleet on the screen grew closer by the second, and every passing moment brought them closer to annihilation. The Clither weren't just invading Earth, they were here to wipe humanity off the map. And there was no guarantee Zather's intel would pan out. But what choice did they have? "Mia," Alex said, his voice firm. "Get the team ready. We're hitting them where it hurts." Mia hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded sharply. "I'll have the squad prepped in 10. As she exited the room, Zather took a step forward, his eyes locked on Alex. "If this fails, you know what awaits your species." "I know," Alex replied coldly. "But if we succeed, we stand a chance." With one last glance at the map, Alex followed Mia to the hangar, his mind buzzing with 1,000 thoughts. The air was thick with tension, the distant hum of ships preparing for launch reverberating through the walls. Soldiers hurried to their posts, their faces set in grim determination. Inside the hangar, Alex could feel the weight of the moment. The stealth fighters, sleek and deadly, stood ready. This mission wasn't just about survival. It was about striking back, reminding their enemies that humanity would not go quietly. As the engines roared to life, Alex settled into his cockpit, his heart pounding in his chest. "This is it," he whispered to himself. "We either win today, or there's no tomorrow." The fighters shot forward, joining the squadron as they broke through the bunker's surface and into the dark expanse of space. Behind them, Earth glowed, battered but defiant. Alex gripped the controls, eyes fixed on the Clither ships looming in the distance. "Prepare to engage," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. He knew the risks. He knew they were flying into the jaws of death. But for humanity, for their home, there was no turning back. The silence of space was a stark contrast to the chaos brewing inside Alex's mind. His hands gripped the controls tighter as the stealth squadron approached the massive Clither fleet. Thousands of ships, their dark, angular forms blotting out the stars, loomed ahead like an impenetrable wall. His fingers hovered over the weapons system, but he forced himself to stay calm, to wait for the perfect moment. "Steady," Alex whispered through the calm. His voice was low, but the tension in it was unmistakable. Mia's voice crackled over the channel, focused and sharp. "Approaching target. Scanners indicate the Clither shield generators are active." We need to move fast. Alex glanced to his left, where Zather's small ship flanked him. The alien renegade had provided detailed schematics of the enemy fleet, and if he was right, their only chance lay in taking out the central shield generator before the Clither could rally their full forces. Zather! Alex called, his voice edged with suspicion. You better hope you didn't lead us into a trap. Zather's cold, reptilian voice came through, unnervingly calm. I have no reason to betray you. I need this victory as much as you do. Alex's jaw tightened. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford right now, but Zather's calm demeanor, even under the threat of death, was unnerving. The alien's motives were still unclear, but right now, Alex had to focus on the mission. The Clither fleet began to shift, a slow and deliberate movement that made Alex's heart pound. He could feel the weight of their power, their cold, merciless intent pressing down on him. Earth hung behind them, a fragile blue orb, vulnerable and exposed. Failure wasn't an option. Engage cloaks, Mia ordered, breaking through Alex's spiraling thoughts. One by one, the human ships shimmered and vanished, their stealth systems activating as they slipped through the vast blackness of space, invisible to enemy sensors. For a few tense moments, there was nothing but the hum of the engines and the pulse of blood in Alex's ears. His eyes darted to the navigation display, watching the red blips marking the enemy ships. Closer. Closer. Suddenly, the Clither began to move, their ships forming tighter formations. They know we're coming. Mia's voice cut in, tight with urgency. We hit them hard and fast, Alex replied. No hesitation. Zather's voice slid into the comms, eerie in its cold certainty. Their shield generator is exposed on the central battleship. Strike there, and their defenses will fall. Without another word, Alex banked his fighter hard, his squadron following in formation. The Clither battleship loomed ahead, massive and menacing, its surface bristling with weapons. For a moment, the weight of what they were about to face made Alex's stomach churn. But there was no time for fear. No time for doubt. Mia, lead the secondary squad. Zather and I will handle the generator. Alex barked, his voice steady now, every muscle in his body tensing with purpose. Roger that. Mia responded, peeling off with half the squadron, ready to engage the enemy forces head-on. As Alex's ship weaved between the hulking forms of the Clither vessels, his sensors flashed red, hostile energy signatures. The Clither had spotted them. Brace for impact! Mia's shout rang through the comms just as the first volley of enemy fire ripped through the blackness. Explosions rocked the space around them, the vacuum swallowing the sound but not the devastation. Alex's fighter dodged a barrage of plasma rounds, his breath shallow as he pushed the ship's engines to the limit. Zather, are we in position? No, Zather hissed. Alex's finger slammed onto the trigger. The ship's lasers lit up the void as they tore through the hull of the Clither battleship, aiming for the exposed shield generator. The first burst hit dead center, sparks and debris scattering into space. Direct hit! Alex's heart pounded in his chest. Finish them off! The battle was far from over, but they had made their first move, and it wouldn't be their last. Explosions lit up the void, vibrant bursts of color against the dark backdrop of space. Alex maneuvered his ship expertly, weaving between the debris of the fallen Clither battleship. Every second felt like a heartbeat, pulsing with adrenaline and fear. They had made a significant impact, but the enemy was far from defeated. Cover me, Zather! Alex shouted over the comms as he prepared to make a tight turn toward another Clither cruiser. He could see the enemy scrambling, their ships shifting to retaliate. Your recklessness could be your undoing, Zather replied coolly, his voice steady. But I will follow you. As the Clither began to regroup, Alex felt the pressure mounting. Mia's squadron had made their move, engaging the remaining cruisers, but the odds were shifting against them. The Clither forces were consolidating, preparing to strike back with a vengeance. Stay focused! Mia's voice crackled through the static. We can't let them regroup. Take out the cruisers before they form a defensive line. With a fierce determination, Alex dove toward the nearest cruiser, his ship humming with energy. He unleashed a volley of laser fire, and the ship erupted in flames, its hull fracturing under the onslaught. But just as he celebrated the small victory, warning sirens blared, and his cockpit filled with red alarms. "Watch your six!" Zather yelled, his tone suddenly urgent. Instinct kicked in. Alex twisted his ship, narrowly avoiding a blast from behind. The Clither hadn't just regrouped, they were surrounding them. Panic threatened to claw at him, but he shoved it aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. "I'll distract them," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Get clear of this cluster and hit the generator on that flagship." "I'll cover your retreat," Zather replied. "But don't take unnecessary risks." Without another word, Alex charged forward, plunging into the heart of the enemy formation. His ship shook violently as a wave of fire met him, but he pressed on, determined to break their lines. The roar of plasma cannons echoed in his ears, and the cockpit rattled as he dodged and weaved through the enemy fire. Suddenly, a Clither ship exploded beside him, sending debris flying. A massive piece of metal grazed his hull, and alarms blared in protest. He barely had time to regain control before he spotted a flurry of motion in the distance. "Mia!" he shouted into the comms. "What's your status?" "We're holding them off, but they're pushing back hard. We need you to take out that flagship shield generator." "On it," he replied, gritting his teeth. He could see the flagship now, its enormous structure glinting ominously, surrounded by a swarm of smaller ships. Zather's voice cut through the tension. "We don't have much time. I'll draw their fire, you go for the generator." "Let's do this!" Alex felt a surge of camaraderie wash over him. Despite their differences, they were fighting together for a shared goal. As Zather veered off to engage the enemy, Alex made his move, steering his ship toward the flagship's exposed side. The generator shimmered faintly, a beacon of hope hidden behind layers of armor and defenses. "Engaging cloaking," he murmured, activating his stealth systems once again. The ship flickered, disappearing from sight as he approached. It was a high-risk maneuver, but he had to time it perfectly. Just as he activated the targeting system, enemy fire erupted in his direction, forcing him to dodge and roll. The ship shuddered violently as he narrowly escaped destruction. Come on, he muttered under his breath, sweat trickling down his brow. Finally, he found his opening. He locked onto the generator, heart pounding in his chest. "Now or never," he whispered, squeezing the trigger. The shot fired, a brilliant beam of energy shooting toward the generator. It hit the target dead on, sending a shockwave through the ship that resonated in Alex's bones. He could hardly believe it. He had done it. But the celebration was short-lived. The Clither flagship began to tremble ominously, and alarms echoed through the ship as it began to break apart. "Get out of there!" Mia's voice screamed over the comms. "Now!" Panic surged within him as he pulled hard on the controls, yanking his ship away from the impending disaster. The flagship was collapsing in on itself, and a wave of destruction was about to ensue. With adrenaline fueling his escape, Alex pushed the throttle to maximum. He could see the devastation in his rearview mirror as debris and fire filled the vacuum of space, but he had to focus on survival. "Everyone regroup!" he shouted into the comms, urgency slicing through the tension. "We need to assess the damage and plan our next move." As the remnants of the fleet gathered, a sense of hope mingled with the danger still lurking in the darkness. They had struck a blow against the Clither, but this was only the beginning of a fight that would demand everything they had. The bridge of the Tempest buzzed with the aftermath of their narrow escape. Alarms had finally quieted, but a tense silence filled the room, as if the crew were collectively holding their breath. Alex leaned over the control panel, his heart racing as he monitored the damage reports flooding in from all systems. "Casualties?" he asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him. Mia, her brow furrowed with concern, looked up from her station. "3 ships lost, but the rest of us are intact. We took a beating, but we're still flying." Alex nodded, but the weight of those losses bore down on him. We need to regroup and plan our next move. The Clither won't let this go unpunished. Agreed, Zathor chimed in, his expression serious. They'll regroup and come back stronger. We have to be ready. As he spoke, a low rumble shook the ship. The crew exchanged wary glances, and Mia's eyes widened. What now? Alex gripped the edge of the control panel, straining to keep his composure. Evasive maneuvers. Prepare for potential. Before he could finish, a massive Clither dreadnought materialized on the view screen, its dark hull ominous against the stars. The bridge erupted into chaos as alarms blared again, warning of incoming ships. Shields up! Alex shouted, adrenaline surging through him. Prepare to engage! The dreadnought's guns began to fire, massive projectiles whistling through space. Alex's fingers danced over the controls, his instincts guiding him as he ordered the ship to roll and weave, evading the incoming fire. The ship shuddered under the impact of near misses, rattling their senses and reinforcing the gravity of their situation. Mia's voice cut through the clamor. We can't keep this up. They'll overwhelm us. We have to outsmart them. Alex replied, scanning the dreadnought's tactical readouts. We've got to hit their power core. It's our best shot. Right. I'll coordinate with the other ships, she responded, determination replacing fear. As Alex focused on the dreadnought, Zathor's sharp voice echoed. I can create a diversion. I'll draw their fire while you make your run. No, Alex snapped, instinctively protective. You can't risk yourself like that. Zathor's expression hardened. If you don't act decisively, we'll all perish. Trust me, Alex. I know what must be done. A heavy silence fell as Alex weighed his options. Zathor had proven himself a capable ally, but the stakes were impossibly high. All right, he finally conceded. But we're in this together. No heroics. Understood, Zathor replied, and the tension between them dissolved into mutual respect. Mia quickly relayed the plan to the rest of the crew. Get ready for Zathor's signal. We'll need to time this perfectly. The atmosphere shifted as they prepared for battle. Each crew member, hearts pounding, focused on their stations, determined to turn the tide. Alex's heart raced as Zathor's ship split from the formation, maneuvering into a flanking position. The Clither, recognizing the threat, redirected their fire, illuminating the darkness with bursts of energy. Alex's resolve solidified. They had to capitalize on this moment. Now! Alex yelled, racing toward the dreadnought's core, his ship zigzagging through enemy fire. The Tempest glided toward the heart of the enemy ship, where the energy readings blazed like a sun. Firing torpedoes! Mia announced, her voice steady amid the chaos. Locking on target! Alex replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he pressed the button. The torpedoes shot forth, streaking toward the dreadnought with lethal precision. The impact was like a supernova. A blinding flash engulfed the view screen, followed by an eerie silence. For a heartbeat, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, the dreadnought began to tremble, its structure fracturing under the strain. Direct hit! Mia cheered, her excitement contagious. Let's finish this! Alex shouted, the thrill of victory igniting hope within him. As the dreadnought broke apart, a wave of energy surged through space, and the remaining Clither ships scattered, retreating into the void. Alex and his crew had done the impossible, striking a decisive blow against a seemingly insurmountable enemy. In the aftermath, the bridge erupted into cheers, but Alex remained focused, a resolute fire in his chest. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Let's gather our forces and assess the situation, he said, raising his voice over the jubilant cries. This is just the beginning. We have to prepare for what's next. As the crew began to settle, Mia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We did it, Alex. Together. He met her gaze, determination mirrored in her eyes. Together, he affirmed, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. The path would be fraught with danger, but they were united, a force to be reckoned with in the vastness of space. With their spirits high, they looked to the stars, ready to forge their destiny and defend their home against the shadows looming in the distance.